Hello everybody, hope you're okay. Welcome to a bridge over the new east-west rail line near where Verney Junction old station used to be, but I've really come here for an Adios 8 good point, bad point quickie. So the new Adios 8, I've hidden behind a wall here on this bridge to see if I can avoid any wind noise. Apologies if you can't really hear me too well. First good point, you've got the classic black and white striped adidas Adios. What's the saying? Any colour is fine as long as it's black. I think another good point for me is that this is just a true to form Adios. There's not really many shoes now with a sort of a low stack that feels a bit like an old school racing flat, just with a modern take. Obviously we've had the Streak Fly of the ones that I've actually tried. This one is actually a lot heavier than the Streak Fly, but definitely feels like the old Adios 1 that I raced a 253 marathon back in 2016. Hard to believe that you would even consider wearing such a shoe these days. Which I think goes on to my next point of a good point, bad point. Does the Adios 8 really have a place these days? I got the Adios 7, I liked it, and when I looked at the mileage I'd done, it was only like 35 miles in a year. So really you would have to say it's a shoe that I bought, and actually although I liked it, I didn't actually find any use for it. So I'm hoping this one will have more use. Another good point, it does feel slightly softer than the previous Adios 7. Not nearly as soft though as the Boston 12 that I looked at yesterday. But that's good in a way because it just feels like it has more of a place. It's, you know, when I was running on the road, I'd done about 4 miles here. And it's a shoe that just felt like I wanted to get going. I was doing low 7s pace. So I think definitely a shoe that you wouldn't want to take out in your easy days just because largely it just wants you to run faster. There's a thinking, I suppose, that if a shoe is easy to run in, then you can run easier. But also if a shoe's too easy to run in, you end up working too hard, I think. So that's a definite negative in terms of like what you want to use it for. Having said that, if you want a shoe that is just really lightweight and minimalist and you like that sort of shoe for everyday training, then yeah, fine, go ahead. Good point is the lockdown on the shoe is good. I'll just show you how they look on my feet.
Lockdown is pretty good in the Adios 8. They made it a bit wider, but not too much wider, so it's definitely like a narrow feeling shoe. Definitely a bit more room though in the forefront. I've had to put in the laces a fair bit, but not as much as the Boston 12. And it's a very, very thin tongue there. But yeah, very nice mesh upper there. You can see my socks have got a blue front at the top there, not pink, but yeah, I mean, it's like really, really minimalist.
Another good point, if you're a fan of a gusseted tongue, this one has one. Some shoe reviewers seem to think a shoe is not worthy unless it has a gusseted tongue. Well, yeah, it does make it slightly easier to slip on, but it's a very, very paper thin tongue, this one, which really does sort of help to keep the weight down. It's 273 grams in my UK 13.5. Which actually isn't that light when you think that the Streak Fly in my size is about 230. I think a moderately good point is that this cost £120, which puts it at less than the Boston 12 140. The downside is that none of the discounts work. So usually with the Adios, you used to get a discount straight away if you're an Adidas member and have bought shoes from them before. None of them seem to work. They seem to be a bit wise to that now. I think that sometimes I thought that was a bit of a mistake and they were just selling off shoes too quickly, too early. So I think at £120, this actually compares quite well to other shoes in its class. I mean, I think the Streak Fly was around about that. A good point, it even tells you on the side there it's got 28mm stack at the back, which means that it must be track illegal because I think they have to be 25mm or less. But these days with the shoes like the Dragonfly and all the other contenders putting out their super spikes, then I don't really see any need to wear flats on the track anymore. In fact, when I did wear flats on the track, I run one of my worst races ever, so I don't think I'll be repeating that. In terms of the ride, I would say the good point is it feels just slightly softer, but not too soft. It definitely feels like you're quite connected with the ground here. And as I said earlier, definitely a shoe that you feel like you want to get going. Whereas the Boston 12 did feel much more sort of like squidgy comfortable. You know, you could go fast in it, but it just felt like it was really wanting to sort of hold yourself back a bit. Not sure if it's a good point or a bad point or not. I checked the insoles of both the Boston 12 and the Adios 8, and though they are exactly the same length, the Adios 8 one was actually thinner, so I think that just helps to contribute to that slightly lower to the ground feeling and obviously less weight with less sponge even in the insole. But if you've got the Boston 12 and you want a more squidgy ride in the Adios 8, maybe you can just switch over your insoles, or vice versa. If you want a bit more cushioning in this one, put an insole with a bit more. I think a good point with this shoe, it's going to be very, very breathable. It literally is a mesh there which is see-through, so probably not the shoe to perhaps take through on a winter snowy day, but considering we're now finally arrived in midsummer, I'm sitting here like gone 9 o'clock. Good point, I think that the outsole is continental, but it hasn't really gone overboard. It's got quite a smooth surface there, which I think lends itself better to more like what effectively is a racing flat. So quite interesting at the back there, it's more squared off than it is in the Boston 12. Not quite sure what the thinking there is, but it kind of effectively makes that quite a wide sort of platform there at the back. There is just a little bit of white rather coverage there at the back. Not sure whether it comes in different colours in the other colourways. I think I could only see 2 colourways at the moment. I didn't really like the other one. I thought this one was a bit more classic and wanted to differentiate it with the Boston 12 so I can pick them up out of my car, know which is which. A good point, bad point, depending on how you view it, it's got this little pull tab thing at the back here. Didn't really find out I needed it, but maybe sometimes, especially the Boston 12, and I've done them quite tight, it might be helpful. In terms of the dual density foam here, we've got the new Light Strike 2.0 foam at the back, which definitely is slightly softer, and you've got the premium Light Strike Pro foam at the front there. What's interesting, if I compare it with the Boston 12, is that the Light Strike Pro extends all the way at the front here, whereas with the Boston 12 it's actually got the Light Strike 2.0 as a very thin layer underneath, so it's almost like a sandwich. So in a way that actually felt like slightly better for my toes actually. I do rather sort of toe off right at the front here, so I always prefer something to have a bit more sponge at the front, so I think that's definitely a plus point for me. But as I said, it's a shoe that kind of feels you want to get on, so you're up on your toes anyway a bit, I think. I mean, if you want to plod in this shoe, I think it's really the wrong shoe, but of course you can if you want to. The laces aren't as long as the Boston 12, but I think that's partly because I haven't tightened these as much because I don't really need to. You can do the double knot if you want to, but I never tend to do the double knot unless I really have problems with the heel, and I always think that I'd rather just cut off my laces than thread them through. I did on the Vaporfly 3, but that was almost essential. That was really trying to get that shoe to adapt to my foot at all. So for Ben Notley, is this a shoe for goal pace? Well, definitely yes. Is this a shoe for trails? I think, yeah, I think it would be pretty good actually for trails in the summer. Not sure about going through mud in the winter with this see-through mesh upper. I think you get your feet wet quite quickly, but I think it would be quite stable, certainly more so than the Boston 12. So if you want a minimal shoe and don't need to go out and buy a trail racer just to plod around the trails, then yeah, I think this is the one, definitely. And it's £50 cheaper than the 170 Merrill, isn't it? Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this little look at the Adios. I'll be sure to keep running in all these, and I think I need to do a bit of a comparison, maybe a shoe off, and let's continue the conversation in the chat below. Okay, hope you found this interesting. Like and subscribe with that, and see you on the next one then. Bye, which will probably be in the Takumi Sen 9, because I've got that in for testing as well. And go and check out Andy FOD's runner's thoughts on that. I think that there's imminent. He's put up an Instagram post on that, so I'd be very interested to compare, because I think we've got the 2 pairs of UK 13.5 in the country. And for people like Bev who like to see my colour coordination, I'm not doing too bad. I've got some pink tinged socks, and of course I've got my pink top as well, haven't I? Ah, drat, I was hoping to film this video by this site of Verney Junction Old Railway on the new East-West rail line, or the revamped East-West rail line, but it looks like they've finally closed it off and the high-speed train will be behind that fence. That's rather a shame. Never mind, let's find somewhere else. So we're standing on a bridge near this old site of Verney Junction Station, which used to be basically where that board is now, which is now a bit of a sorrowful sight for the people who live there, because all they're going to see now looking out their window is that board rather than a nice field. So yeah, it's the perils I suppose of living in the middle of nowhere. So here behind me is the new Winslow Station with a nice old milestone to contrast the old and the new. Definitely come in shape now. All that building wasn't here a few months ago. Not sure it's opening, maybe next year. Can't be too long, I would have thought.